The Joining the Dots podcast focuses on the many challenges facing education and how different approaches and innovations are needed to meet those challenges.
Join co-hosts Matt Jessop and Al Kingsley as they have discussions with innovative educators, business leaders, policymakers, and other stakeholders, and guests looking at transforming the future of education.
Right, my intro for you, Dave, is the head teacher extraordinaire, hot tub hogging, lycra wearing, genius. You're a bit of an inspiration to people. I don't think you don't like it. I know. Flakefleet is I've been, and it's an absolutely amazing school. What it does to meet the needs of all the kids, and the staff love working there, and health and safety's gone out the window with your races down the corridor on the chairs and things like that. But put that to one side. Your cafe is quite a community thing, I think, at the moment now, isn't it? For all ages. You took your kids and the families on Britain's Got Talent several times. You cried on live TV, which is a bit embarrassing, mate, to be honest. But I thought I'd mention
Not embarrassing at all, man.
I'm never
real men cry, Matt. Real men cry.
Every day, some of us. And I think, you got to the final, but you came sixth, I think. So sixth.
We came sixth, yeah.
Which is brilliant.
Just sixth. Still upsets me now.
It's out the country. That's quite high. And the thing I want to talk about, your touring visit to New York that's coming up this year, or is it the autumn?
Yeah, up in May, yeah.
So, and your school and my school and Al's schools and my school and your school are all very, very different. So, Flakefleet, you've got a stupid amount of challenges, really. It looked like lots of areas of the country in terms of all sorts of things.
Yeah, it's full on at the minute. Like everybody, the threshold for support is off the scale. I think we've got 25% of our kids are on the SEN register. I think we're up to about 44 EHCPs, and that's everywhere. And it's one of those things where you're very careful about what you say because you don't ever want to sound like you're doing your school down. But it is everybody, and I'm phenomenally proud of the offering that we have and what we do and things like that. But I'm not going to lie, it is tough. And then you throw in the fact that there's nationally a fall in birth rate, so that that last year, this year, next year again, we're almost certainly going to lose. You got 60 going out, maybe 45 coming in. So you got the pressure of that. And then I think our kids are growing up in a very different world. They spend most of the time online. I think you've got Trump and his right-wing mates setting the tone of the narrative of how it's okay to speak. I mean, we know it's not okay to speak like they do. But I just think it's a very, very, very different world to the one we certainly grew up in. But even 5 years ago, I think it's completely different. And my worry is that this setup that we have in schools, we've always struggled to make it work over the last 20 years, whereas suddenly I feel like everything is accelerated and we need some different solutions. We need to be a hell of a lot more flexible and quick to adapt than we ever have been. But we all know how long some things can take.
What do you do about the tech aspect then? Sorry, go on, you go, Al.
Well, I was going to dive in with a hang on a minute. I've got two heads here who I know are super passionate and put kids and community ahead of worrying too much about what the frameworks and the standards say and the league tables that are competing with those challenges of ever-increasing needs, reduced support for our SEN learners. I absolutely agree that there's, we can go way back to whether it was Sure Start centres disappearing or others, but the greater burden on our schools from a community perspective. And I kind of feel sometimes, and that's why I think it's great having you two folks together, sometimes the challenge is about all those barriers and all those issues, and yet actually you find really innovative ways, both of you, to try and mitigate that and make sure that kids get the maximum life chances, and to hell with the framework in quite the same way.
See, I it's funny because I probably come across as to hell with the framework, but it's rubbish. I'm terrified, and the reality is, for a worrier like me, I'm very open about how anxious I get, how much I worry about things, I obsess about things. We will do all of the innovative, exciting stuff that's a little bit out there. I love being a disruptor. Let's get people, encourage people to do things differently. But the reality is, if you don't do the other stuff to a degree, and we have to play the game, then we can't do all of the other stuff because it'll all come crashing down. You'll get external pressures and things going on, and I'm really torn with that. That especially when you're in the Ofsted window, the reality is you can have people say, just do what's best for the kids. Yeah, fair enough, we will. But there's always going to be an element of you have to play the game, you have to do certain things to keep the powers that be off your back. Matt might disagree because I know, Matt,
No,
you don't worry about those kind of things, but I do. I'm terrified all the time, permanently. Even now,
I
years
think
off another Ofsted, I'm thinking about it.
but the phrase "to a degree" is the interesting thing to me, because the to a degree, how far you take it, you've got to then match it up with the inspectors you get.
Yeah.
Because the inspectors, in theory, when they came to us, they're looking for thriving kids was the main thing. And to be fair, that's what they did. They spoke to the kids, are you happy, you're thriving? And all this additional stuff, the enrichment of things was brilliant, but we still have to tick that box. But that was, 2 years ago now? I'm at the stage now, I'm thinking the boxes we have to tick, and you referenced the last 5 years, and I'm thinking the boxes we have to tick are less and less relevant, and the speed of change. And the fact that in the last few weeks, Facebook and Instagram have stopped doing fact checking, Twitter stopped fact checking. This naivety that kids have to be 13 plus to use AI, which I'm not against, but the fact that they think kids under 13 aren't using it all. They're all getting the news from social media. So I'm fast going towards the stage where actually the degree to which we meet the Ofsted boxes or tick the Ofsted boxes, and the degree to which we should be teaching them how to use AI safely, and actually find out what is real, because a lot of these kids will see Trump and they're going to see the nonsense about DEI being part of the.
Oh God, the diversity was, that plane came down because of diversity. It makes you physically want to throw up.
People will believe him, and kids will see it, and kids will believe him, and you think, well, how do we get round the fact that that's reality? That's not even deep fakes. That's I can't.
Let me flip it around a different way, folks, because I think, I see it in our schools. It's very easy to say we'd rather have a broader curriculum than worry about 1 point up on the league tables type mindset. But I totally get we're all conscious of that external scrutiny, and we can argue the merits of its validity, but it sits there. So I suppose the bigger question is, how do you find ways to still meet those objectives, but at the same time squeeze in somehow to give a much more diverse and broader opportunity for your learners than perhaps some schools are able to? Is it innovation? Is it luck? Is it, that's the bit that I think people listening are like, okay, we've got these restrictions and limitations, but also you're managing to do things way beyond that. That a sense of, well, we've taken the lead to try and push through with better community engagement and create a hub.
I'll answer that. I think one, it's a commitment to doing it and genuinely believing that we need to do all these, give them the experiences, do things differently. You really have to live and breathe it, because if you don't, you're not going to make the time. And I think that's what it comes down to, that when you're absolutely knackered, you're stressed, you're feeling the pressure, that's the time where it's really easy to not do things. But that's exactly the time I think that you need to. And I think looking back, when we had the period post-COVID, we were, coming back into school and challenging behaviour and all sorts of things. I think we hibernated to a degree. I know I did, head down and get on with the stuff that's going to get us back in the game, preparing for Ofsted. And it's only now that you think, do you know what, all the stuff that made us so special and different, and the things that kept us going and got me out of bed on a morning, we need to bring those back. But it's just hard to do that when you get out of bed and you feel exhausted. It's like the never-ending marathon at the minute, isn't it? We talked about that during COVID. You never quite knew where the ending was coming. The reality is there's never going to be an ending. We are forever going to be running, and we are permanently shattered, and keeping staff going through that has been really tough.
Do you not feel like 10 years ago we used to say that year was harder than last year? And then 5 years ago we used to say, well, that term was harder than that term. And now we're literally saying, blimey, this week was harder than last week. And at some point we're going to get to today was too much after yesterday, and that's just going to be it. If the education system collapses, then society, everything else relies on the kids going to school and things like that. And I'm just a bit like,
I think the connection was lost, wasn't it? During COVID, that sense of belonging, that it's become a bit more fashionable to talk about and things like that. But that connection, that sense of belonging to society that we had to whatever degree before COVID, I think we lost it. Some people were very good at keeping in touch with others and whatever, but I think some parts of our community that, they are brassic skinned, desperately living in poverty, I think they just feel cut adrift. And I think when Labour came in, there was this overwhelming sense of positivity. It'll be like 1997 all over again. And the reality is, it doesn't feel like that, you know. And I understand there's lots of other things at play and some difficult decisions, and it's a long path. But I really worry about some of those families who just feel like, you know, when do things, you know, it's all well and good us talking about things get better. I'm still going to pop out from my expensive specialty coffee later on, and the reality is we may never know what it's like to not have enough money to go on your gas meter, you know, holes in your window, and life being really tough. And I think for them, that's where my worry is moving forward. What does that look like for them in a couple of years?
How do you cope, Dave? Because when I talk to people and they say about the challenges with SEND and safeguard mental health, I say, well, our context is schools like yours, because we've got 5-6% EHCPs, very, very low pupil premium, whereas you are right up there. But the deprivation you see is that, you know, kids don't have beds and there's no carpets in the houses and things like that. And it's, how do you cope personally? Because I struggle with lots of things.
I think it's such a cliche, isn't it? But you know, all the evidence and research is that our generation would rather take a bit of a pay cut to be in a job that makes a difference, to have a bit of autonomy and whatever. And the reality is, we are making a difference. You know, we have an opportunity to change the world. It might be for one family, it might be for one street, a community, or whatever. And I guess that's all we can do in this situation. And I guess the other realization is that you become hardened to it. Like your social workers who are going out, you know, supporting some really, you know, some families in some really difficult circumstances. I guess to a degree, I don't like to admit, but you probably do become a bit hardened to it. You can only do so much. I actually think we do an amazing job supporting our families. The worry is that we're running out of other things to try. You know, 5 years ago, we can do this and we can do that. And we've got quite a lot of money, not money in reserve, but money that we could allocate in different ways. But as things become tighter and tighter, you run out of options. You know, we love a bit of blue sky thinking, you know, anything is possible. Well, anything isn't possible if you've not got the money or the staff to do it. And I think that's where, for me, in schools in our context, things are feeling more pressurised. Things like our nurturing have gone from 3 staff to 1, you know, and I still appreciate that's 1 more than most places. But you can feel that bit by bit, you just having to cut your cloth accordingly. And we'll come through the other side of it. But I guess that's what, you know, that's where I'm feeling the pressure at the minute.
That's really interesting, focusing on that, Dave, because in our schools, we have a secondary school with nearly 70 EHCPs. We have an infant school in our cluster that's way over 50% EAL students, and each community has different needs in terms of school and support. And absolutely, we've seen the same context that year on year, our reserves, we're running a deficit budget. We're trying to offset and maintain the staffing levels we need. But your choices do become more diminished. And that's realistically, I think that hope that a change of government would see some kind of instant change in the funding formula for schools is one because of other pressures in other economic areas of the country. That doesn't feel like that cavalry is coming over the hill anytime soon. So I suppose there is an element here, which is we can talk about, and many people want to focus on the need to change our curriculum and revise what we do and build in more skills. But actually a change in education or a review of education clearly needs to be done in parallel with the resources and the capacity in social funding, social care, all those things that wrap around. Otherwise, in isolation, we're not going to be able to shift the dial for our families. So I'm kind of interested from a different aspect, which is, you know, if you were sat in the room now, and I know you connect with lots and lots of educators, what would be the 3 biggest levers that you would focus on, Dave, as being most important in your school? People would assume it's all curriculum, and I suspect it's not. For many of us, that's but one of our priorities.
That's a cracking question, that one. We need more money. We do need more money, but the reality is that the money's not out there. So part of it, and the reality is, I'm not down with my finance. I don't know how the World Banks all operate and things like that. I mean, what I would say is, I think Rachel Reeves and the Labour Party, my gut feeling is part of the plan is to get the world of finance on board to realise that they're not making any daft decisions on what the market would, you know, Liz Truss style stuff. And part of it is that they recognise they've got to get them on board, they've got to trust them, and it will come, because anything too drastic, everyone's going to freak out. But I would have us spending, investing to grow. We know our schools are falling apart. We know we need more hospitals. We know we need more prisons. So let's invest in them. Then the people get the work, the jobs, people are then spending. I appreciate that feels like a really simplistic way of looking at it. But unless we address some of the issues that we have now, it's only going to be the judicial system, benefits and things like that picked up further down the line. And I always think pennies saved now will save pounds further down the line. So I guess there's that. I would do Ofsted very, very differently. I think that could be done differently a couple of weeks. I appreciate anybody from Ofsted, and I do check in with Ofsted now and again. And I think there's some good people out there. It needs an appetite. It needs to change, because my worry is, at the minute, we actually feel like we're in a pretty good place. But I know 2 years down the line, back in the window, things are feeling exactly the same. I'm not sure where we find the extra capacity to go into that Ofsted mode and building back up. So I would change Ofsted, because that's one of the few levers they could pull that wouldn't cost very much money.
You and I, Matt, I think for years I've said you've got to have some accountability, and Ofsted has to stay. And actually, recently, I'm of the opinion that Ofsted needs to go, because I don't think the reform's coming. And I think the Schools Week article this week, just gone, highlights the fact that it's tweaks, it's Ofsted tweaking things. I don't think the required change is coming. But you met Sir Martin. He came to your school, didn't he?
Yeah. I liked him. I still say it. I liked him. He got us. I mean, you're laughing, but I didn't. I'm kind of half tempted to send a cheeky email saying, right, you said you'd have a beer with me. Let's make it happen. The bit that I can't understand is when he came in, he got it. I mean, he saw the kids climbing on the tables. We told him about the biting. We genuinely didn't do anything different. This is some of the issues that we're having. He saw, a number of children who should be in special needs provision. It's not out there, so we've since opened 2 special needs units since he's been in. I think he does get it. Some of the other people that I've met, they do get it, and my worry all along is that there's something else at play. There's either somebody, a few people from the old guard, clinging on, giving bad advice. I don't know what it is. It's an institution. It's not my world. It's a bit like working with councils. I'm fortunate. I have a really good relationship with our councils, but the politics comes into it. And there's just something, we all know that it needs to change. We all know.
That's why I say I think it needs to go, because it seems like there's a whole body of people somewhere that are determined to just maintain the status quo.
He didn't pull any punches. He knew it. He came in. He did have some of the ideas about. This was really early on. He threw out there about would it be better if you got the phone call on the Monday? That's it. That came in a couple of months later. I mean, one of the things that I liked, which I don't think we've particularly seen a huge amount of, is looking at more local data. As in, it's all well and good comparing our school to the English average. Well, actually, yes, it's better compared to the Lancashire average. What about comparing it to the Fleetwood average and looking at that data? Because what he said is, would you feel better going into an Ofsted with better data? And on the SLT went, yeah, of course we would. So he does get it. Honestly, Matt, I swear it. I'll tag him in it. If you're watching, Matt, I want that beer with you now. I want to know what's really going on. And that's that. Go on.
I was going to say, Dave, it's an interesting strand there. And I think there has been some change. But if I put my hat on, sitting on the DFE, what was the Head Teachers Board Advisory Board for my region, I think when the government made a push, and we're looking over the last 10 years with the academisation process, one of the very helpful outcomes from the Ofsted assessments was double RIs being accelerated into the academy system. And I think some people definitely felt that it was actually helpful to have this very clumsy measure, because it allowed that kind of broad brush. You need to move, you need to find a sponsor academy, you need to transfer across. What's happened with the government change is, I think you see the government change, but you don't see those civil servants changing. And I think there's always been a perception that any conversation around revising Ofsted is people don't want to have their work marked by somebody who doesn't get them. Yet all the conversations from education seem to be, if we had clustered peer reviews, if we were talking about things in a local context, if it was a collection of peers sitting down together, they would be able to be much more challenging, much more supportive. They'd be able to share insights that made the process actually constructive. In the US, they have an annual, or it's biannual, they have their NAEP ratings, which is a similar kind of clumsy broad brush about how schools are performing based on league tables. But there's one difference, which is if you're identified as being an underperforming school, the outcome of that is not just a badge, but it's actually additional funding. And I think that's also a very kind of sensitive, but one that isn't identified, which is if you identify a school has got challenges in areas for development, if you don't give them the funding and the tools, why should you be surprised if that can't be mitigated in all cases? It's not always about money. But you raised the point about funding. And I thought, well, in our trust, if we suddenly went from $5 and a bit grand to $8,000 funding per head on all of our students, we'd still have the same problem getting enough educational psychologists in the area. We'd still have a problem accessing the support we needed from the LA. Sitting on our SEND board in the region, we still have the same problem that what used to be 10 weeks is now 10 months for getting complex assessments for some of our children's needs without local health services. And so it's almost like the money in the school isn't going to shift all those levers unless in parallel, as you've alluded to, Dave, you kind of look root and branch and say we need to fund the broader social systems so that we've got those joined up. So I kind of feel like they all go full circle in that sense. But Ofsted's an interesting one. I dived in because I was very aware that Matt could have just had one of those moments when this blood vessel comes out of his forehead and then he talks for about 2 hours on his views. But it clearly is contentious, and yet it doesn't feel like the big listened in all the right places.
You and I were talking before, weren't we? All we need is peer review, somebody from the local authority or Ofsted and a head teacher locally meet termly to review each other's schools, and every 3 years come do a formal inspection, like Ested in Wales. That's all we need to do. That's all Ofsted need to do. But they're sticking with the whole framework as it is, and it doesn't work. It's not going to work.
That was very measured of you, Matthew.
I'll give me a pep talk before we came on live.
So, Dave, tell us the impact of the social hub that you've been building and developing.
I was listening to all of that, and in terms of funding, and on Tuesday we won a police award. Never, we don't tend to apply for awards, but there was us, there was Wire Council, Regenda Housing, social housing, and the police. And the police applied for an award for partnership working, the POP Awards, all of Lancashire Constabulary. Genuinely didn't realise it was quite such a big deal. We won our category, which meant that we then had to go up against all the other categories, of all the other 6 ones across all of Lancashire, massive area. We had to present, talk about our partnership working, then be asked questions and answers on stage in front of about 200 police officers and dignitaries.
Is this when the assistant chief described you as a bit sweary?
Thank you, Matthew. Yes, for our parents out there, my parents know that I'm from Hartlepool, I'm a bit sweary. Thanks, Matt. But yes, the assistant chief constable did at the end say, "You're a very sweary head teacher." To which I replied, "You're a very sweary profession. I've spent quite a lot of time with you recently. And if you think I'm sweary, your colleagues are way worse than me." And afterwards, I apologised, thinking that I was in bother. And she went, "Don't worry, fella, you're going to have to go somewhere to swear more than me." Loved her. She was brilliant. But the point of all of it was, that's one of the proudest moments of my career. And I'm lucky. I've had loads of really cool moments happen. But that was recognition of the partnership working. The reality is, 2 years ago, the crime within 1 square mile, I think it's even 1 square kilometre of Fleetwood, the crime was off the scale. There was 4 OCGs operating. There was massive issues with antisocial behaviour, with drugs and all sorts of things. And the police recognised that they needed to do it differently. They profiled areas rather than criminals. They started engaging a lot more with us. I don't know about you, Matt, but I've had lots of police officers visit me. It's going to be the start of a beautiful thing. And then I don't see them again. And the reality was, we said we're going to do it differently. Saw them every couple of weeks. I could message them. And the reality is, 2 years down the line, the crime is absolutely plummeted. The police are looked at very differently. The comments on social media are much better. And it's all well and good us doing our thing within school, but it's no good if they're going back to communities where there's all sorts of antisocial behaviour and crime and drugs and things like that. That's the same with the NHS. We've got brilliant links with the NHS, we've got our own social prescribers, we've got our own mental health workers, and we've managed to cut access to mental health services down from 2 years to about 2 weeks. If we say that we're really struggling, we can do it. And it's actually the partnership working. We haven't got the money, but we've got the willingness.
But
We've got the appetite. We want to.
Has anyone looked at what you've done and said, we can replicate this?
Yeah. You know, what's happening? Like, I felt like we were just treading water for a couple of years, and actually we were building the relationships that when somebody emails a message, it tends to be a WhatsApp message saying, can you help me with this, what can we do about that? We know each other, we trust one another, we're not fighting over our egos or whatever, and we're making some exciting things happen. So now if we've got issues with housing, I know who to contact it. With gender council issues, I know, you know, the only one missing, and I'm going to make this happen in the next week or two, hopefully, is social services. I think we need more of a relationship with social services, but it's just going back in time, isn't it? Somebody the other day said I'm a re-pioneer. We're only going back to what we all used to do, you know, community engagement. What was it? Extended extended services. You what?
Community cohesion, was it called for a while?
No, not community. There was another one, wasn't it, where basically working with community, you know, it's making a big difference. And what we're really looking at, we've got a community coffee shop, Matt's been in it, where it's brilliant, lovely coffee, lovely food, lovely environment. Don't think it'd feel out of place in Brighton or the Northern Quarter. It's meant to feel dead chilled out, cool because it's not trying to be cool. It's a warm space. People can spend hours in there. They can just drop in for meetings. You are?
It's busy all the time.
Yeah, it's busy. So like yesterday, a guy I know met with colleagues from the NHS, and then the next thing you know, we're having a big conversation about what we could do together. Just it's like almost like those old school water cooler moments. But it is making a difference. You know, it's helping address loneliness. We can help. We had a jobs fair. 13 people got into jobs a couple of months back. You know, we're trying to help and support with the stuff that goes on in an evening, on a weekend, in the holidays, because I genuinely believe that that's where the biggest wins to be had. You know, we're smashing it in school. We are. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. We are. The relational approach, open play, everything. It's working.
You're like a sure start centre on a new level.
Yeah. Done. You know, I always think of the amount of times that you'll go to a really horrible little room where it's magnolia with dodgy coloured carpet. You know, they're just crap.
I dig at my school, Dave.
No. Most people have got magnolia walls, Matt. We've got white. It's not that far off. But it's places that people feel valued, that they want to come along to. They want to, you know, when we do parenting classes, they come into what is essentially quite a nice, swanky coffee shop. They want to be there, you know, as opposed to some dilapidated NHS building or council building or whatever that just feels unloved, uncared for. You know, it's just a different way of doing it. It's not been easy, but it's definitely worth it. We're still, if 10 is the ultimate journey, we're only at 5 or 6. You know, we're very much at the early stages of it, but is it working? Yeah, 100%.
Are you still looking at a chain of coffee shops that's opening a second one?
No, not at the minute. No, not at the minute. Further down the line, maybe, but we've reined it in. Let's smash this properly. Let's do this one properly. And then, you know, I am guilty of thinking of running before I've actually learned to walk properly. So no, let's do this one properly. So it's really exciting.
I mean, what you do though is your school is such an important part of that area, doing things way above what it should have to do. But if you didn't do it, you just think, what would it be like for the kids and the families? And it's.
Do you know? I often think. I went to church as a kid. 35 years ago or whatever. And I don't know whether in a way we're replicating what the church might have done. No, but genuinely, you know, if you think back to like 50 years ago, churches were way more attended. You know, you'd go along to your Christmas fairs and things. And I think that is all, you know, and I've been head of a church school. You know, some churches are still very good at being at the centre of the communities, but unfortunately, I think we've lost that. And I think there's a place, you know, in most towns, between the skills, you can impact across most of that area. And I think there's a place for it. And yes, you're right, we shouldn't have to do it. But if we don't, who is? Because it's not out there. I mean, we had a PTFA meeting yesterday. There must have been 15, 20 people turned up. And we were just talking about the fact that, there's no money out there, but what can we do together? You know, we'll do the litter picking. We'll get the coffee shop open, you know, with volunteers on a weekend and whatever. You know, there are lots of people who want to make a difference, who want to do kind deeds. We got brilliant at that during COVID. Let's just give people the opportunity to make a difference. You feel good about it, don't you?
So here's a suggestion, folks. Given that impact and community, I love the bit with the link to from a faith perspective, because I absolutely agree that was often the heart of the community, and we all like to feel we're part of something. I mean, sometimes it goes a bit off the rails, and you end up like Matt, a Liverpool fan, but more broadly, we all like to be part of a team or a tribe. We have our pupil premium and we have our sports premium. Do you think the government should be thinking about, well, we don't have Sure Start centres, but maybe we should have community premium as a funding to schools to let schools like you do what you're doing and actually be part of that cohesion for communities?
What Dave was saying, the link to the churches, is spot on, because I've had the same conversations about, we talk about a network of charging points across the country. What has every village and town and city got? It's got schools. So if it was a community hub, what has every village and town and city got? It's got schools. So a community premium would be amazing, wouldn't it?
I think it's an amazing idea. If I'm honest, the worry, I suppose you could appoint people. I think the worry is that when people are tired and stressed and overwhelmed and got so much going on, it's having a genuine appetite for that kind of thing, because we're all so different. Somebody asked the other day, is part of the success of what you've had going on, like my energy or the other people on the stage, our energy. And I don't think it necessarily is that. I actually think there's loads of people with energy out there. It's given them the opportunity or the vehicle to get involved. And some people will come along, and if they don't, if it's not for them, well, they'll fall by the wayside, and that's fine. But what we're finding is our meetings are a good laugh. We know that we're making a difference, and year by year, we're just adding to it. I think, yes, maybe you need that seed of something at the beginning. There's probably a tipping point where if you've got 3 people and whatever. So I think part of it does come down to having a person or a group of people who genuinely are up for it and get it and want to make a difference. But I think there's loads of them out there, and we definitely saw that during COVID.
I think education's held up by them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sector.
But that would have been the same in the church. If you think back to, I did go, I said, I don't know if you two went to church, but there would always be that family or a couple of people that would keep it going and go the extra mile and set the flowers up. And yeah.
I think that's I'm looking at my little counter here and our timings for our next episode. So it kind of feels like we're coming to the close of our sermon today, just tying in that theme. I'm going to give Matt just kind of last words, and then I think if you wouldn't mind, Dave, just also share, if anyone's listening, if they wanted to get in contact with you or find out more about what you're doing, because the beauty of what we try and do on our podcast sessions is just signpost great people who we know will share their insights and support.
I mean, so Dave, I want to ask about New York. Because we're chuffed we take our kids to Scotland and we go to France and we go to the cities, which isn't easy when you live in rural Cumbria. You're taking some kids to New York. Where's that idea come from? Why New York?
Well, I saw, I always wanted to take them to Europe when it was the Erasmus scheme. Yeah. It was Erasmus, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then I saw that the Turing scheme had come about.
Yeah.
And I thought, right, well, I could take them to Europe, or I could get completely carried away. Matt, Matt, my whole thing is, what is it okay if we get carried away? So it's like, right, let's go somewhere really exotic. And then I started thinking, what, Singapore, Tokyo? The reality was, I didn't think that lots of our children would know particularly where it was, know much about it. I wasn't convinced that they could relate very much to it. And that would have been me as a kid, 100%. Mm. Whereas New York, they will have seen Home Alone and all the other movies and the Empire State Building and all of those kind of things. We've paired up a school with a school in Harlem, very, very mixed demographic. So we are, we're going to give them a very different experience to what they're used to. But it was meant to be somewhere that they could relate to, aspirations. Let's get everyone said you can't go on a school trip to New York.
I hate it when people say you can't.
I say a red rag to a bull.
Yeah.
So we applied, and I did apply to take 60 of them, which looking back was ridiculous. I would have taken all of them, but we got enough for 20, and it was difficult. We literally pulled names out of a hat. The parents still don't believe me. I hated telling the other 20. In the end, about 40 said they wanted the name in the hat. 21, 20, 20 didn't, unfortunately. But yeah, that's where that came. We're going to give them an experience of a lifetime, and all expenses paid trip to New York.
How long are you going for?
4 nights.
4 nights. So you're going to try and squeeze in the school partnership?
We'll do school every morning and lunch, and then take them out to see the sights and things like that. Empire State, Statue of Liberty.
I'm 50% in awe of you, and there's 50% of me thinks you're insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you
That's
complete
about
the
right,
risk
right?
assessment, which is what we've been doing this week, it's like, oh, I think we're going to put baby monitors in every room. But why not? And do you know what?
Why not?
What I love about the daft things that we've done at school, staff don't even bat an eyelid now. Neither do the parents, neither the kids. And that's what you want. You know, if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. And I don't want, the parents to take the mick and the kids say we can't do that. We don't get that anymore. Yeah, go on then. What, you're going to have cheeky girls on your stage in the summer? Yeah, of course we are. Why not? You want pyrotechnics on the roof? Go for it. You're going to charter a helicopter and land on your field? Why not? Everything break it down, man. Anything's possible. Don't dream, Matt. It's a thing.
Absolutely, I think it's brilliant. You've still not got an alpaca though.
I must admit, it did pop up my timeline when we had one in school a couple of years back. I would love an alpaca, but I'm quite happy just coming to meet yours at the moment.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, cheers.
I've
Matt,
really
Al,
enjoyed
Al wants to wrap it up, doesn't he, Al?
Yeah, yeah. We've got
I feel it.
I could listen to you two for hours, and we should have scheduled a couple of hours because there's just so much more to celebrate and to inspire and to look, in spite of all the challenges of the stuff that people are trying to go the extra mile with. So I do feel bad for cutting you off, but I also feel very aware we've got another guest joining us on a different recording in a couple of minutes. Dave, honestly, it's been a pleasure, and I knew when Matt said I'm going to get Dave on the show, it was going to be something that would fill up our tank with a bit of positivity, as well as reflecting on some of the challenges and the cool stuff you're doing for a community that really I know will get and does get far more value from the support you're still putting. Yeah,
thanks, man.
Yeah, it's official. Dave McPartlin, you're a good one. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
No worries, fellas.